justice, no peace. Hands off community.
Tony Blair!
More criminals.
Tony Blair!
More criminals.
Tony Blair, we dismiss you!
Now it's time to arrest you.
Tony Blair! To the Hague! Tony Blair! To the Hague!
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thanks to the Stop the War Coalition for this and all the work that they have done in the last 7 years. As we listen to that lamentable list, short list of a long list of the people who paid what Mr. Blair called the blood price for his perverse association with George W. Bush, the one that stuck in my mind most was child of killed couple, age unknown. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people have paid that blood price. Mr. Blair didn't pay it. None of his children would ever be asked to pay it. Mr. Blair is one of those leaders ready to fight to the last drop of other people's blood. And that blood is still flowing in Iraq and around the world as a result of the tidal wave of trouble launched by these criminals. Now, on the day that the Chilcot inquiry was appointed, I described them in Parliament as a parade of establishment flunkies, 4 knights and a baroness. But on the principle that even a stopped clock is right twice a day, in the course of all of these proceedings, and I hope again today, some truths will emerge, some questions will be asked that Mr. Blair, accomplished liar as he is, will find it difficult to answer. Many journalists have asked me this morning if this marks the end.
There's people shooting behind you.
I believe that this marks a stepping stone towards the proper holding to account. This is not a trial. The government which appointed it ensured, legislated that it could not be a trial, that no one could be held responsible. But it must lead to a trial, because it is clear from everything that we have heard and everything that we know that the war on Iraq and the subsequent occupation was a big crime, that a pack of lies was told to the country, the Parliament, the armed forces, even the Queen, in order to commission that crime. And moreover, that the crime has not even prospered, but that disaster has ensued. Out damned spot, as Lady Macbeth said, but all the perfumes of Arabia would not expunge that damned spot, that blood spot, from the crime that she had committed. And all the perfumes of Arabia, all the money from the lecture circuit and the director's fees and the consultant's fees, all the houses and all the worldly goods being amassed by Tony Blair and his wife will not expunge that spot on their hands. More terrible than the crimes of Macbeth. This crime represents the death of 1 million people, the exile of hundreds of thousands of people begging on the streets of Jordan and Damascus and elsewhere, the breaking of Iraq into pieces, the inflation of sectarianism and murder stalking the streets of Iraq until today, the spreading of extremism, fanaticism and hatred across the world, including into the underground trains in our own country, something warned about even by British intelligence before this crime was committed. Forgive me if I sound angry and emotional. As Andrew said, Iraq meant a lot to me. The people of Iraq meant a lot to me. And I have watched in agony, as you have, all the things that we predicted come through in bloody technicolor and still reeling out yet. You know, they hanged Chemical Ali last week for killing thousands of Kurdish people in the attack on Halabja. If that's the price for killing thousands, what's the price for killing hundreds of thousands and having lied in order to bring it about? Hanging would be too good for Tony Blair. If he was a man at all, he'd come out onto the steps of the Queen Elizabeth Conference Centre and commit harikiri in front of the world. It would be the only honourable thing that he could have done. But he won't. He'll skulk away like he skulked in today as a coward and a murderer. God damn you, Tony Blair. God damn you, Tony Blair.
Hello. George mentioned honour, which is what's been most conspicuously missing, I think, from the behaviour of the ministers and civil servants who were in power at the time of the beginning of the Iraq War. And this morning you may have heard on the Today programme David Blunkett saying that Tony Blair would be remembered as a great and charismatic leader and that this Iraq incident would soon be forgotten about. Well, I hope that none of us here will forget it, and I hope that we'll keep reminding everybody else that this was really a disaster. It was a disaster not in terms only of the deaths of the people that we read about this morning, but also because it diverted the world's attention from some really serious problems into a non-problem. Tony Blair was, it turns out, a weak, arrogant, cowardly man who was so impressed by the glow of power from the White House that he was prepared to submerge the judgment of all of his senior intelligence officials and to take us into a war that didn't need to be fought. He was a man who really deserves to be remembered for his weakness more than anything else, and his arrogance. He was a self-righteous man who believed that his religion, a religion that he shared with George Bush, gave him the right to make a judgment in the absence of any democratic process. He continued that anti-democratic position that he had established then by introducing a number of laws called the terror laws, which we are now all suffering under, which means that probably any of you can be arrested for taking photographs here because you've probably got a government building somewhere in your lens. You might not know about that law, but you're all criminals now. And whatever you do, don't point your camera at a policeman because you can be arrested for that as well now.
Domestic extremists, I'm proud of it.
Thank you. So please don't let's forget what Blair did, and not only Blair, but all of the horrible, slimy people in his government, the Jack Straws, for example. They're all still there, and they're all still in power, and they're all still appearing on Question Time, acting as though it wasn't their problem, that somehow they were misled. They weren't misled, they misled us. So don't forget.
War criminal!